Awesome. All right, I'm Paige, I'm an alcoholic, and welcome everyone. And I'm just going to manage that. Boom. Alrighty. So where we're picking up today is at the very bottom of page 70. It's not the full paragraph, but pretty close. Right, full paragraph right at the bottom. If we have been thorough. And so I did my best to try to get through all of 70 and 71 last week, but we get what we get, and it's okay if we get upset because we know how to write some inventory on that. Amazing. And so where we're diving in, we wrapped up how to write sex conduct, sex inventory, and how to develop and mold a sane, sound ideal. And now what we're doing is we're summarizing the 4-step inventory process. So, page 70, bottom paragraph. If we have been thorough about our personal inventory, we have written down a lot. And so how do we know? How do I know if I've been thorough? As I was just at a meeting last night and we were talking about steps 4 and steps 5 and that talk about I want to be thorough, I want to be thorough. And I will always emphasize that thoroughness and speed can happen at the same time. I can move through it thoroughly and move through it quickly. But how do I know if I've been thorough? So the book is going to give us a guide. Now it's not going to give us a number, which is like 60 resentments, 40 fears, and 36 sex conducts. It's not going to be that precise. But if you, after you've done all the writing, can feel like, man, I wrote down a lot. That is how we know that we've been thorough. And I'll be honest, we can feel it. We can feel it. We know if we've been cutting corners. We know if we've been pulling out the eraser and like, I don't want to write that. I don't want to write that. You know what? That's why I suggest pen. You can't get sober if you write in pencil, but that's why pen can be helpful, right? And so that's how we know we've been thorough. It goes on to say, we have listed and analyzed our resentments. And this gets to be, my friend Terry and I, we do a big book study on Fridays, and Terry always references that idea of this being a mirror. I get to hold my experience up to this book, and I get to do it with the illness of alcoholism. I get to hold up my experience with the allergy and the obsession, but I also get to hold my experience up with the directions and with the promises. And so I can hold up my experience to what we see at the bottom of page 70. I was doing that for the people that just joined. I thought it was clever. At the bottom of page 70, so glad you're here, with have I listed and analyzed my resentments? Check. I did that in resentments. Column 1 I listed. Column 2 and 3 I began to analyze. Column 4 I got in depth about and really began to get freedom from these. It says we have begun to comprehend, which is to say to understand their futility and fatality. Again, I awaken to that in the 4th column. In the 4th column I see how futile they are. And when I begin to get free of them is usually when I begin to be aware of how fatal they are. It's like, when you don't realize how sick you are until you start feeling a little bit better? That's what it is like. And it says, we have commenced, which is to say begun. We're not done. There's continuing growth, but we've commenced to see their terrible destructiveness. And why I emphasize we have begun is because I am really big on inventory. And the reason I'm so big about the importance of inventory and the importance of picking up these columns is because I don't just do it in my 4th step and put it on the shelf and that was great. What a fun little activity that was. That was super helpful, delightful. No, the columns are tools that I'm going to use to continue to grow and to continue to live this spiritual way of life. I'm going to use them in the 10th step. And in step 11, when I do my evening review, I'm going to use them there. Man, when life hits me, man, I'm gonna turn to those columns. Or it's spring, if we got to do a little bit of a spring cleaning, I am going to go back to these columns. So we have begun to see the terrible destructiveness that is resentment. And it says we have begun. Man, What do you mean? I can't just stop at my fourth step and think that's enough love and tolerance. No, but we have begun. And I'm pointing this out to point out that this is a way of life. It's not I did a 4-step, that's great. And that is great. It takes a lot of work, as we're talking about. But it is how I live my life. So we have begun to learn tolerance, patience, and goodwill toward all men, even our enemies, for we look on them as sick people. Is that my experience? Again, how do I know if I've been thorough? How do I know? I'm beginning to feel that freedom and that peace, and to see these people and these institutions and these principles that I put down in my 4-step. I'm beginning to see it in a whole new way. It says we have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and are willing to straighten out the past if we can. When did I do that? Well, I did that in step 4. Because, man, this book has got some spiritual jujitsu, some spiritual judo. Because I'm like, column 1, you're a jerk in my resentments. Column 2, here's why you are a jerk. Column 3, your jerky behavior, it affected me in these ways. I say a prayer so that I can see them in a new way. And I dive into the 4th column. Whoa, judo flip, I'm the jerk. And more often than not, I find that I was the jerk first. And I got to make amends for it. Rude of this. Like, woo, got to see it in a whole new way. But then I also have a look at my sex and relationship conduct where I see where I've caused harm in that area of my life. Now, there are people who take that one line as a basis for a whole other harms to others section. And what I will say is that I don't do that. We'll look at anyone that's not on our 4-step in our 8-step list. That's where I tackle that. And just from my experience in resentments, man, it gave us a whole lot of directions. It even gave us an example. You know what I mean? We had some resentments to have a look at. There were prayers, there were directions. Same thing as we dove into fears. It gave us directions and columns and prayers. And in sex conduct, directions and columns and prayers. Directions and columns and prayers. Oh my! We're off to see the wizard. Which is your sponsor, or whoever you're doing your 5th step with. Yes, that ties in real nicely for the next chapter. Almost a perfect segue. Not quite, but almost. I'll take it. All right. So for me, I don't do a whole other harms to others section in the 4th step, because I feel like if it was intended, they would give me more directions. But what I do want to share is if your sponsor is saying that you do a whole other harms to others section, or you're coming to this big book study and you're like, but I do a harms to others section, that's okay. You're not going to get drunk doing more. That's fine. That's fine. Like, it's okay. And we do. And that's why we go line by line, word by word, page by page. That's why we go line by line and word by word, is to glean the precise instructions. But when COVID hit and we got online, the world opened up. And I saw that I should say we all, but I think all of us here for sure are trying to find the precise instructions, and there's always a little bit of wiggle room. You know, do you put your resentment on one page? Do you put a whole bunch of resentments on one page? That's fine. I mean, I like the way I do it because it gives me room to write. But it's okay. So if you're here and you're like, I did a whole other, or my sponsor told me to do a whole other harms to others section, so I'm going to tell my sponsor where to go and where to put it, please. That's not great communication. But you don't have to. It's all okay. So we have listed the people we have hurt by our conduct and we're willing to straighten out the past if we can. So is that my experience? That as I'm going through this, I might not be jazzercised about the process of amends. I might not be like, oh boy, I can't wait. But I'm beginning to grow in this willingness to, if I can make it right, I will. It says, in this book you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. And we're tying back to that theme that faith without works is dead, which is to say belief in the power of God or a higher power or a creator or a spirit of the universe, or belief in AA or a belief in the steps without works. And works is the tangible, practical actions of all 12 steps is dead. To be dead is drunk. So I do need faith. I don't need a whole lot of it, just enough to do it. But I also need works. So faith, so that we, in this book, you read again and again that faith did for us what we could not do for ourselves. And I want to emphasize, what could I not do for myself? What could I never do by myself? In my experience, it is permanent, contented sobriety. And that is at base minimum. But here's what I found. I've been doing this thing a little while, and, life, gets a little lifey. You know what I mean? You guys know what it's like, where it's like, ooh, it's getting a little lifey. I want to open a window. It's getting a little lifey in here, And what I have found is that again and again and again and again, faith and works, ultimately God, higher power, creator, spirit of the universe, does for me that which I could never do by myself. And if you're wondering how, but Paige, how? Paige, I can't set that boundary. Paige, I can't make that amends. Paige, I was asked to do a lead share and I'm afraid. Paige, I have to leave my spouse or my partner and I don't know how. Paige, I have to go get a new job or go back to school and I am terrified. Or Paige, I have this other thing that I turn to and I can't get freedom from it. How do I get freedom from it? Well, this next line tells us how. We hope you are convinced now that God can remove whatever self-will has blocked you off from him. And how I see that is I don't have to do the big scary thing. I have to do inventory and a fifth step and a 6 and 7 and make amends. I have to get me out of the way. And God, our power, creator, spirit of the universe, flows through me. That's how we do it. That's how I do it. I don't have to do the scary thing. I just got to get me out of the way, and God will do it. And that, by the way, that is the whole and sole process of the 12 steps, to clear away the selfishness, the self-centeredness, the pain, the guilt, the shame, the remorse, the stuff inside of me that is blocking me from that connection with God. That is the purpose. And when that channel is cleared, it flows. And the it is what I need. The it is the power, the it is the connection, the it is the love and grace of God, and it flows through me. And it says, if you have already made a decision, the decision, step 3, that's what that was, and an inventory of your gross or handicap, step 4, and listen, I wouldn't call any of your defects gross, but I know mine were pretty gross. So, ew, gross. You have made a good beginning? What? Oh, come on. I'm not done. Did you see how much work that was? And I had to go through it quickly. What do you mean? It says, that being so. Okay, so the book is going to meet us where we're at. It's like, oh man, it's a beginning. Yeah. That being so, you have swallowed and digested some big chunks of truth about yourself. Again, how do I know if I've been thorough? Oh, we are on page 71, and we're just going to flip the page here in a moment. But 71 to 72. How do I know I've been thorough? Has this been my experience? That I have had some big chunks of truth about myself. So, was I eating that crow? Was I eating that humble pie? You know what I mean? Oh, we were not having fun-size bites with that. We were having some big old bites. And I prefer the little spoon, which is just a little fork, little fork, little bites. That's how I do. Anywho, but big fork, big bites, the truth about myself. All right. So now let's dive into the next chapter, page 72, into action. Oh, come on. Into action? God. Where's the interesting on our laurels chapter? Am I right? Like, when do we get the, just chill out page chapter? Come on, into action. And I emphasize into action, not into thinking about it, not into talking about it, not into doing everything you possibly can to avoid the action, but telling people that you're really working on it. Nobody here would ever do that. None of you guys relate. But it is into action, and that is what this is. Alcoholics Anonymous is an action-based program. The 12 steps are not about what I do, what I think, or not. They are about what I do. They're not about what I think or what I feel or what I believe, but they are about what I do and the experience that I have is the result, into action, which is a little rude because I had to do a lot of action and now you're telling me more action? Goodness gracious. All right. So it says, having made our personal inventory, check, we got that done. What shall we do with it? Again, all this action. It says we have been trying to get a new attitude, a new relationship with our Creator, and to discover the obstacles in our path. Again, that is the purpose of the 12 steps. And if you've been coming to this study for a while, y'all know I love my sneakies. I love my sneaky prayers. I love my sneaky promises. Now we are going to get to some sneaky promises here today. Ooh, not the 5th step ones, some sneaky ones. But what we have right there is a sneaky description of a spiritual awakening. We have been trying to get a new attitude, that spiritual awakening, a new relationship with our Creator, that spiritual awakening, and to discover the obstacles in our path, to see what is in me that is blocking me off from this power. That's what Alcoholics Anonymous is. That's what we're here to do. By the way, if you're like, ew, I don't want to, that sounds gross. That's fair, by the way. That's absolutely fair. I was not jazzercised to do any of this when I got here. But just hang with us and please let us help you. We have admitted certain defects. So if I've been thorough in my inventory, yeah, fair enough. I've admitted certain defects. We have ascertained in a rough way what our trouble is. We've figured out, kind of give or take, we see some big patterns. We've seen some of that. We have put our finger on the weak items in our personal inventory. So we're seeing various manifestations of self. We're seeing, again, these things that keep happening again and again and again. Man, isn't it annoying when you write inventory and you see something you never saw before? And then in the rest of the inventory, that's all you can see. And it was like there the whole time. Oh, man. I mean, for me, it's actually quite freeing. But it's like, oh, man, right? It says, now these are about to be cast out. Cast out. And I point that out because it is not me managing them. Get my little manager fingers up in there. Let me move that around. No, cast out. Taken from me. And what we are pointing to is steps 6 and 7. God will remove it from me. And my job is willingness. Which, by the way, that sounds great on the face of it. I know if you're like me, it's like, no, but I want to do it. I want to defeat my ego, which is an ego feeding proposition. You know what I mean? Like as soon as I defeated my ego, man, my ego would just love that. Have a little resurgence. Round 2, fight, you know? This is cast out. It is taken. I don't have to do it. And that is good news. But here's the bad news. That requires action on our part. Man, it's almost like this chapter is into action or something. That's a lot of doing that they want me to do here in Alcoholics Anonymous. It's almost like earlier, I was like, man, what do I have to do? And then it told me. Gosh, it's almost like that's the purpose of this book. Wild. So, this requires action on our part, which, when completed, will mean that we have admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our defects. And there's a couple things I want to point out. Actually, I'll read the next line. It says, this brings us to the 5th step in the program of recovery mentioned in the preceding chapter. So this is step 5. Now, we are going to admit to God, to ourselves, and to another human being. My first ever sponsor, and she was quite a personality. She said that there are 2 types of people in the world. Now, I don't know if this is fully the case, but it really made sense to compare and contrast the 2 of us. So my first ever sponsor, she says there's 2 types of people. There are the people that stand on the pile of mess of their life and they're like, yeah. And then there are people, and that was her, if you're wondering. And then there are people who hide under the pile of mess in their life. And it's like, oh God, I'm the worst. I'm the worst person that ever lived. Like, that's me. And when we say another human being, we're pointing to the true humility that is available on offer. You see, why would anyone sit on their 4th step? Because I'm afraid of step 5. Why am I afraid of step 5? Because I'm afraid you'll reject me. I'm afraid that the more intimate and vulnerable I am, the more of myself I expose, those squishy bits, those dark pieces, those things that I think another human being could never accept, could never love me. Man, I want to kill myself behind those things. I think if I expose that, you're going to reject me. And I'm so much worse than you. But the reality is we are all shoulder to shoulder upon this common journey. No better, no worse, another human being. I am human. And I'm going to talk I'll talk about it now because that's actually how my attention span works. It's like, oh, idea, off we go. But here's my experience. If you can write it down, so you know what that means. That means there's a word for it. We developed a language, and keep in mind, English, hodgepodge of many different languages, so probably English, and then that word is in some other languages. So we had to develop language to describe it. And if we have language to describe the thing that we feel guilt and shame around, guess what? Somebody else has done it. Now, if there is a law against it, you know what that means? That means so many of us run around doing it. The government had to say, hey, cut that out. No. You know? And I just point that out to say, man, you're not alone. And what I also want to point out is the word admitted. Now, there's 2 ways to look at admission. Oh man, I'm going to make this reference. The first is a bit of a confession, and that's often how we view step 5 as a confession. I need to admit, and this is the one I often use. I need to admit that I stole your car, slept with your husband, and peed on your carpet. And some of y'all know what's coming. I would never. It was linoleum. You guys know. So there's that confession, right? But there's another way to look at the word admit. Oh man, I didn't check the basketball scores. So I know we got a lot of people here that is from South Carolina. And let's say because I know the South Carolina women's basketball, the Gamecocks, that they are doing well, unless they're not. And if the game happened, I didn't look up the score. I don't know what's happening. But what I will say is, let's say, okay. I will not acknowledge whether they did well or not. But let's say we're going to go watch the Gamecocks women's basketball play. And what we would need, and some of you are like, no, thank you. I don't like the sports. Okay, it's a concert. You know what I mean? But we would get a ticket. And on that ticket, it would say admit 1. And another way to look at the word admit is to let in. And in the 5th step, it is also a letting in of God and another human being. And and I'm so sorry if they didn't win, and it's a sore subject. My bad. It's fine. Oh, that's the trouble when I reference the sports, right? And so that is step 5. It is a letting in. And this is one of the things that I absolutely love, is the book is meeting us where we're at. It is meeting us in our resistance, and it is going to help us to navigate and overcome. Man, the book has so much grace for an alcoholic of my type, which is just to say a regular alcoholic who's also a human being, you know. But it says, this is perhaps difficult, especially in discussing our defects with another person. I don't want to do that. I don't want to be vulnerable. Man, I have that darkness inside of me, and I want to push it. We're going to read about that. I want to push it away, and it grows in the dark. But I'm going to let that light in. I'm going to admit that light. It says, we think we have done well in admitting these to ourselves. That I've done well enough. I didn't share this. I'm done well enough. And gosh, don't we feel that? After, like, that was enough. I don't want to do. I'm good. Thank you. No, thank you. 5th step, no thanks. Right? And it says, there is doubt about that. Oh man, meeting me where we're at. It's going to take me where I need to go. We usually find a solitary self-appraisal insufficient, which means it does not work. A solitary self-appraisal is me looking at me and my defects of character on my own. It's often not enough. And I look at it through the lens of, if a solitary self-appraisal is insufficient in step 4, a solitary self-appraisal is insufficient in step 10. I've got to share this with others, but I don't want to, because I'm afraid you're going to reject me. Oh, I'll share with you some of my 5th step stuff as we go along, my experiences. And it says, so insufficient doesn't frickin' work. Many of us thought it necessary to go much further. We will be more reconciled to discussing ourselves with another person when we see good reasons why we should do so. So we're going to be more open to doing a 5th step if we get good reasons. Now, I would not call alcoholics emotionally immature. I believe that was Harry Tebow that called us that. Rude. King baby over here. Rude. But what I will say is, doesn't it just feel that, like, that sort of toddler, give me one good reason, and then the book is going to meet us with love and compassion and start with one good reason. So the best reason first. If we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. And that is a stark warning. We saw a similar warning when we were wrapping up last week and talking about our sex conduct. If we do not live up to our sane, sound ideal and our conduct continues to harm others, we are quite sure to drink. It's not a theory, it's a fact out of our experience. And here, best reason first, if we skip this vital step, we may not overcome drinking. And that might be like, whoa, they're really laying it hard, in 4 and 5, but the reality is that promise was always before us. You don't have to highlight that one in pink, but that promise was always in front of us. Oh, we're on page 72. Welcome. So glad you're here. And that promise is that step 1 promise. See, in step 1, step 1 is not, I can never ever safely drink again. That's a part of it. I have the allergy of the body, which promises that there will never be a time where I am able to safely take another drink in my life. But because of the obsession of the mind, I am promised that I will drink again. And the step 1 is a promise of the imminency of the next drink. The first drink, I will drink again. So this is not new information, but man, we got to have it hammered home again and again, because I just don't want to hear it. I'm like, no, I'm the exception, right? It says, time after time, newcomers have tried to keep to themselves certain facts about their lives, trying to avoid this humbling experience. They have turned to easier methods. Almost invariably, they got drunk. Almost always, they got drunk. So again, when somebody relapses, it is never what happened. When somebody goes out, sometimes we want to be like Sherlock Holmes or CSI Miami. That's a dated reference. CSI Miami of the relapse. Like, I can't remember the guy with the sunglasses and we want, why did they relapse? Let's get the fingerprints out. Let's get the DNA swabs. What happened? It's never what happened. It is always what didn't happen. The 12 steps to produce a spiritual awakening, or what stopped happening. I stopped taking this course of action. And it really is that simple. There's freedom in that simplicity. There really is. So, it says, having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is they never... Jessica Fletcher, love it. There's a gal that she was in the 80s and I can't remember her name. Somebody will get it for me. I was thinking about that gal. I think she was on an island and she was going around and solving mysteries. It's not Maya Angelou, but that's the only name that comes to mind. Anywho, somebody will get it in the chat. That's not important. Sorry, focus. Having persevered with the rest of the program, they wondered why they fell. We think the reason is they never completed their house cleaning. we're taught, and you guys probably remember that house cleaning metaphor, with the newspapers and the bottles and the dead cats, and I gotta get that stuff out of the house. And the truth is, we spoke 2 weeks ago about how, in my experience, fear and faith can and do live. It wasn't Miss Marple, but but we're heading in that direction. I'll look it up after. I think the actress was Angela Lansbury. I think that's why I was thinking by Angela. This is now I've taken you all on this tangent, which is not helpful. You will not get sober if you IMDb what shows she was in. That is not helpful. We're all off on this tangent. I am sorry. But we never completed that. Yes, Murder, She Wrote. That's what I was thinking. Yes, we got it. Team us. Thank you. Crushed it. Elizabeth, gold star. Oh, gosh. Back on track. I didn't complete the house cleaning, and we were speaking how, in my experience, fear and faith do live in the same house. In fact, I can't have faith if I don't experience fear. Otherwise, it is simply trust. But in my experience, self-centeredness and serenity cannot live in the same house. So often I cannot feel that presence of God when I'm wrapped up in the bondage of self. So it makes sense that I am still blocked from that power, and I did not access the spiritual awakening that I needed. It says they took inventory, all right, but they hung on to some of the worst items in stock. What would I be leaving off the fourth? What would I be leaving off the fourth step? What would I not be sharing in the fifth step? The stuff that I need to. The stuff that I need to. Right? It says they only thought they had lost their egoism and fear. They only thought they had humbled themselves, but they had not learned enough of humility, fearlessness, and honesty in the sense that we find it necessary until they told someone else all their life story. And this might seem like an Angela Lansbury tangent, but I promise you this is something I talk about every time we hit page 73. In the early 2000s, do you guys remember the rap artist Missy Elliot? In 2002, she came out with this song, and I think, it was Reverse It? You know what I mean? In the song, yeah, you guys know. In the song, she was like, oh, you got a big boop, because that was the radio, they would censor it. You got a big boop, let me search it. Now, I promise you, in that song, she definitely meant you got a big book, let me search it for clear-cut directions on how to recover. It's exactly what she meant. I wouldn't mean anything else. It's weird if you think so. But in that song, she took the lyrics, something like, let's flip down, flip it, and reverse it, and she reversed it. And so, at the top of page 73 are what I like to call the Missy Elliot Promises. Now, if you go to another meeting and you decide I'm going to bring up as a topic the Missy Elliot Promises, I mean, you can do that. But I want to take full blame. I don't think anyone else calls it that. That is really a Paigeism. So just, like Curta, if you highlight that in pink, I don't know if Howard's going to be down for that. Yeah. And so what do? Let's take it, flip it down, flip it, and reverse it. So if I hold on to the worst items in stock, if I avoid doing the fifth step, I will only think that I will lose my egoism and fear. But if I dive into that fifth step and I share everything that I wrote and that which I didn't, what will happen is I will lose my egoism and fear. It will fall from me. They only thought they had humbled themselves. So when I'm holding on to what I think I'm so humble, but I'm holding on to these things. But if I am fearless and thorough in that fifth step and I share it all out, I will experience that humility. And I will learn humility, fearlessness, and honesty if I share all my life story. Now that life story is the fourth step. If I share all of it, especially the stuff that I don't want to share. And based on time, maybe not this week, I don't know, but I'll talk about it now because that's how the brain is working. I did a talk at 1 a.m. last night. If you're wondering why I'm a little weirder than normal, did a talk at 1 a.m. But one of the things is we don't get a lot of directions. I'll point to some things where we can Missy Elliot it, because that's it. Now that is a phrase we all have, common language, Missy Elliot, where we're going to see about how we receive a fifth step. But we don't get a lot of directions on how we can do that. And one of the things that I found really helpful is at the end of every single fifth step, I always want to ask, is there anything else? Is there anything else? Is there any secret? Is there anything you've left off? And there are times, now it's very difficult for people when they want me to offer them clear-cut directions, and I tell them I sponsor based on vibes, which is also high budget, vibes. But before I do a fifth step, when I can kind of tell that somebody is really nervous about that deep, dark secret, it's a vibe. I can't explain how I know it or how I don't. I will often offer, do you want to just rip off the Band-Aid? Do you want to tell me that thing you don't want to tell another soul, and then we can get into the rest of your inventory? And so that's what I do to create that accessibility for that part. It says, more than most people, the alcoholic leads a double life. He is very much the actor. Hey, does this actor reference sound a little bit familiar? Is it not a callback to step 3 where I am the actor trying to play the director and fix and manage, but also I am the actor as I got these walls and masks. We're going to talk about it. To the outer world, he presents his stage character. This is the one he likes his fellows to see. He wants to enjoy a certain reputation, but knows in his heart he doesn't deserve it. It's that idea that I want to be seen as a good person, but I don't actually want to do the work to be a good person. And I will tell you, the most pain that I have ever experienced in my life has been when there is that tremendous distance between the mask that I was trying to present to the world and who I really was. And that for me wasn't even the deep, dark secrets. A lot of that was that, like, I'm great, I'm fine, everything's okay, and I'm dying on the inside, but I can't let you know I'm hurting. Because if I let you know that I'm hurting and you reject me, man, how do I get through that, right? Because I am dependent on you for a sense of value and worth. And it says, the inconsistency is made worse by the things he does on his sprees. Coming to his senses, he is revolted. At certain episodes, he vaguely remembers. These memories are a nightmare. He trembles to think someone might have observed him. As fast as he can, he pushes these memories far inside himself. He hopes they will never see the light of day. He is under constant fear and tension. That makes for more drinking. And on page 21, in the description of the real alcoholic, we differentiated between a moderate drinker, a hard drinker, heavy drinker, and a real alcoholic. They made reference to Robert Louis Stevenson's novella, book, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And just recently, I listened to the actual original book because my reference to the book was based on a 90s show called Wishbone, where a Jack Russell Terrier taught us about literature. So I figured I might not be the most up to date with my memories of a 90s children's TV show, and I gave it a listen. And in it the Dr. Jekyll, and it's very interesting. It's presented as a mystery, so my bad on spoiling it. You know, if you're not caught up on your 18th century literature, my bad. Although I hope you've had time. But in it, it's phrased as a mystery. There's this recollection of this evil character, this force, this Dr. Jekyll, and it's just presented as this man who injured a young woman. And it's the story of trying to unravel who is this Dr. Jekyll and why is he so connected, or this Mr. Hyde, and why is he so connected to this Dr. Jekyll? And what happens in it is Dr. Jekyll creates this potion. And in this potion, it allowed him to morph into this Mr. Hyde. And that Mr. Hyde was that hedonistic version of himself, to do all the things that he wanted to do. And then he would wake up and be Dr. Jekyll, and he wouldn't have the memory of the things that he did because he wanted to go out and enjoy and have fun. But he started to remember, and there started to be consequences. And if you guys remember from page 21, his real problem is not that the potion makes him do things he later comes to realize he does not want to do. His real problem is he cannot stop himself from taking the potion. And then near the end of the story, he begins to transform into this Mr. Hyde, and he can't switch back. And that's what it feels like with my alcoholism. It feels like I've got this double life and I can't stop, and I go back and I go back and I go back. And then it feels like that is who I am the whole time. And I just don't want to think about it. I just want to push it far inside myself. But it grows in the dark. The shame grows. And so what do I need? I need that light that is God. And while I'm on this mini tangent, I want to point something out. Because if you're here today and you're like, man, I feel like that. Man, I've got a secret, or I've got that stuff that I did, and I just feel like I'm the worst person that ever lived. What I want you to know is we are not our defects of character. You are not your defects of character. You are not your selfishness, your self-centeredness. You are not your dishonesty. And you might be like, girl, come on. You trying to do some like little motivational, inspirational sort of... No, I know that to be true based on the fact is that is what gets removed. And if it is removed, it cannot be me. And so there is something inherent that is good within each and every one of us. But even if it doesn't feel like it at this moment, but that's what we get to uncover. That's what we get to experience in this process. So it says psychologists are inclined to agree with us in regards to us pushing things down and avoiding and, we have spent thousands of dollars for examinations. We know but a few instances where we have given these doctors a fair break. We have seldom, which means rarely, told them the whole truth, nor have we followed their advice. Now that's 2 strikes against us, which is rude. Like, by the way, somebody... And was it one of you? Somebody, who was it, told the medical and psychiatric profession that if they suspect somebody has alcoholism, they know to triple the amount of drinks that we tell them. Who ratted? Who snitched? They know that. And then, the following the advice, that's a whole separate issue. I'm not going to be honest. I'm not going to do what you tell me, but I'll pay you for it. I'll pay you to lie to you, and for you to give me advice I'm not going to follow. That's how we do. It says, unwilling to be honest with these sympathetic men, we were honest with no one else. Small wonder many in the medical profession have a low opinion of alcoholics and their chance for recovery. Calling me out on my own behavior. It's probably good that we've already at this point in the chronological order in theory done the 4th step. So, okay, I'm cool being called out a little, All right. So it says, we must be entirely, and we're talking in its entirety, entirely honest with somebody. It doesn't have to be entirely honest with everyone. We don't have to share that deep, dark secret with everyone. But I've got to share it with at least one person. If we expect to live long or happily in this world. Or, I don't know about you. I got here young. But I could not imagine any fate worse than living a long life the way that I was living it. You guys know what I'm saying? Yeah. And if I want to live long and if I want to live happily, I need to be free. And I just got to share it with at least one person. Now, here is the thing that if you have not done a 5th step yet, I'm going to spoil the end. It's spoiler heavy, especially with that murder she wrote. She solved the murder and then wrote a thing about it. Spoilers all over the place. But that thing that I say, man, I would never tell another human being. What is going to happen is you are going to sit down with other alcoholics and you are going to receive their 5th steps. And once you know it, you're going to find out it's the same stuff. It's all the same stuff. And you're going to be able to share it again and again and again. And not like have to, but you're going to get to. Because you're going to see somebody and they're going to share with you their deep, dark secret. And you're going to have a laugh and they're not going to appreciate it. And you're going to be like, hey, dude, me too. Me too. And actually, while I'm talking about this, again, we are all over the place, but we get what we get. And if we get upset, we get a right inventory. So here's my experience. I talk a lot about the unconditional nature of God's love, and that becomes incredibly apparent as we go through this process of especially 4 through 7. Like that's where I really begin to awaken to God's love. I'll tell you, after I did my first ever 5th step, that was the first time that I ever began to feel a part of Alcoholics Anonymous. But it was when I started receiving 5th steps that I began to feel a part of humanity. And what will happen is I will sit down with another alcoholic and I will receive from them their 5th step. And I will ask them, hey, what's the worst thing you ever done? Or share with me that secret that you do not want to share with another human being. Or, hey, is there anything else that you left off? And they will share with me that deep, dark secret. And you know what happens? How I feel about them changes. And not in the way that some of you would expect. I love them more. I love them more. I am a fall-down failure of an alcoholic. You guys know I'm trying to be classy when I tell you I'm, in the bathroom floor pissing my pants. No, it's behind a dumpster. I love them more. I'm the alcoholic who cannot stay sober. I can't be free of my selfishness, my self-centeredness, my bedevilments, my resentments, my fears. I can't be free of any of it. And I, on my own power, and I love them more. And if that is how this silly little drunk can feel about you, imagine how the God of your understanding feels about you. I'm not doing better than God. I couldn't possibly be doing better than God because I desperately needed this power in all these areas of my life. I'm not doing better than God in the love department. That is what I'm talking about when I say that's what's available for us here in Alcoholics Anonymous. Not just don't drink, but an awakening to a love beyond anything I could have ever imagined, a freedom beyond anything I could have ever imagined, a peace beyond anything I could have ever imagined. And it is not conditional on being good, but the only, and it's not, I'll even tell you, it's not conditional. It's not conditional in the sense of all that is asked of me to receive that gift that is already there and available to each and every one of us is to do these steps as outlined in this book as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. That is the only thing that is asked of me. And some of y'all know when I got here, I've shared this before, but I had a friend of mine and she met me probably around year 2 of sobriety, maybe even year 3 of sobriety. And she said, Paige, when I first met you, she says, you were the takeaway is that I win. So if we're competing, I'm the winner, first place over here, I win. The most negative and self-deprecating person that I had ever met. I win. Yeah. What a sad little trophy I have. But that is not who I am today. And she was not exaggerating. I could suck the energy out of the room. I was fun. That is who I was. And that is not who I am today. And that is the result of this work and this course of action. So it says, rightly and naturally, we think well before we choose the person or persons with whom to take this intimate or confidential step. So a couple things. When we talk about person or persons, there are some cases where we might want to take certain parts of our inventory to maybe like a priest or somebody. But, and it's going to give us some examples of who we could take our 5th step to, but a really cool idea. Now, if you're coming up on your very first ever 4 and 5, I promise you, you're going to be like, that idea sucks and I hate you, which is fair. That's fair. I'll take that. I don't want to do that. But you can take one inventory and you can take it to multiple people for multiple 5th steps and have a really, really cool experience and to get different perspectives. Again, if you're like just trying to get your first one done, you're like, no, thank you. I'll just do it the one time. And that is fair. You'll awaken to this. I promise it's going to be more fun than it feels. But as we continue on page 90, or not 94, sorry, on 74, it's going to give us examples of who we could take our inventory to, who we could do our fifth step with. But I want to emphasize something. This book was written when meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous existed in like 3 cities. So if you did not live in New York City, Akron, Ohio, Cleveland, maybe Chicago, maybe Chicago. So if you were not in the Midwest and connected, you wouldn't have what we have today. All you would have is a copy of this book. So some of these directions are rooted in that understanding that there's no AA meetings. I don't have a sponsor, because how could I have a sponsor? I'm AA number 1 in the city, town, locality that I live. And so that's where these directions are going to come from. But who is the first person that I should consider taking my fifth step to? We'll make a little note right before it says those of us belonging. And make a little note to see page 96. And then guess what we're going to do? We're going to pop over to page 96. Woo, we're bouncing around. Bouncing around like how my brain works. Just all over the place. So let's pop over to page 96. And I'll give us just a moment to find it. We're going to be in the middle paragraph. Middle paragraph, page 96 in the chapter Working with Others. So it says, suppose now, and I'm just going to read all of it so that if we're having trouble finding it, that we all like roll in together. Suppose now you are making your second visit to a man. He has read this volume and says he is prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program of recovery. Having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know that you are available if he wishes to make a decision, step 3, and tell his story, step 5. But do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult somebody else. So who is the first person that I should consider to receive my fifth step? Probably my sponsor. That's probably the best person. Now, I will also share with you how I take people through their fourth step is I sit with them. And I sit with them as they write, and I help them with the process. And by the time they're done, all of that writing, they know I'm not rejecting them. You know what I mean? Even if they haven't told me their deep, dark secret yet. Yeah, they know I'm not rejecting them. So they're more likely to then do it with me than anyone else, right? But that is the first person I can consider taking it to. So it go back to page 74. Whoop, 74. I almost didn't tell us to go back. I was almost just back there myself. Sorry, come with me. Group effort, team, we're walking together, shoulder to shoulder. Come on, guys. Yay. All right. So back on page 74. And it says, those of us belonging to religious denomination, which requires confession, must and of course will want to go to the properly appointed authority whose duty it is to receive it. So if we are a religious person and in whatever our religion is, there is a process of confession, we might want to go take that fifth step to the person who is our priest, minister, rabbi, to that religious connection, if we have that. Now it says, though we have no religious connection, we may still do well to talk with someone ordained by established religion. We often find such a person quick to see and understand our problem. And what is our problem? Is that I'm disconnected from God. And so again, if I'm alone and where I'm from, Calgary, Alberta, and I don't know a single other sober individual, well, a priest probably has some experience with confession. And a priest, they're not going to rat me out. and a priest understands that I am doing this to build a relationship with the God of my understanding. Of course, we sometimes encounter people who do not understand alcoholics. Now, where I live in the world, we have just a little bit out of town, we have a Franciscan retreat center, and they do retreats. But one of the other things that they do is they receive fifth steps from alcoholics and drug addicts in the recovery community. That's a part of the service they offer. And there's a lot of people who like going out there because it's beautiful. You get an incredible view of the Rocky Mountains. It's really peaceful. You don't have to see them again. There's, and they've heard a bunch of them. And actually, I've done 2 fifth steps with nuns. One was a nun that was out at Mount St. Francis, and the other was a separate nun. And I'm just going to share this with you. I think I'm a monster, and I think I have done some stuff, but I also think I'm interesting. Nope, that was incorrect. I have bored 2 nuns, two, bored them, and I'm like, ooh, I got some stuff, and they're like, bored, separate times, boredom, separate times. So, and sometimes they don't give a lot of feedback. From my experience with people who have gone out to that sort of place, often a priest or minister or rabbi might not give a lot of feedback. So that's just something to consider. You know what? We're right at the time when I am supposed to wrap up, so we will leave it there, and we'll pick it up right in the middle of step 5 and talk about 6 and 7 next week. And I hope you'll come and join us. So thank you.